My name is Arlene Chan, and I'm the author of The Chinese in Toronto from 1878, From Outside to Inside the Circle. The subtitle of my book shows the huge transition of the Chinese community in Toronto to where it is today. And I got that phrase and that idea from my mother because when she was growing up in British Columbia, at one point she had to go to a segregated school. And so she was taken out of regular school and had to go to a school that was for Asian people and for First Nations people. And on her way going to school, she had to pass a regular school, and she would be looking from outside through the fence and looking at all these children at the regular school, and she would say, you know, why am I different? Why am I being held outside? Why can't I be inside with them, inside their circle? Well, my father, when he came as a 9-year-old, he didn't speak a word of English. And he made it his point to learn how to speak English. And so back then, there weren't schools. He didn't have to go to school, but he went to study English at the churches. The English churches wanted to convert the Chinese, all the Chinese that were coming into the city. And so one way that they knew what would really attract the Chinese coming to the church was by offering English classes. I think if you look at pictures of Chinatown the way it used to be, like 1- and 2-story buildings, and you look now, if you walk along Dundas Street, you know, the whole south side between Bay and Elizabeth Street, with the exception of one building, 3-story building, which is the only building left from the original Chinatown, it's all high-rise like condos and totally modernized. If you go down Elizabeth Street from Dundas to City Hall, it's all these high-rise buildings. Chinese have always, when they first settled on York Street, that was the earliest settlement of the Chinese in Toronto, and they had to move further north up to Queen Street because York Street was getting torn down to build all the banking buildings. And then when they moved over to Elizabeth and Dundas area, then it got torn down to build new City Hall. And then they moved over to Spadina and Dundas. City Hall was officially opened in, I think it was 1965. And then when the city was starting to talk, like, let's do some further development in Chinatown here, that it all sort of segued in with other areas of the city and all these politicians, like-minded politicians who said, wait, we've got these neighborhoods, we've got Little Italy, we've got, you know, Chinatown, we've got these neighborhoods that, you know, the city was looking at to tear down, because when you look at ethnic communities like Chinatowns and Little Italies, they were all in the worst parts of the city because that's where immigrants settled, in the poorest parts. And I mentioned earlier that Chinatown was in the ward, which had been earlier inhabited by East European, the Jewish community settled there, and the Italians. So that would have been a target for the city and developers to come in, tear down the old, and put up the new. Storytelling is a tradition that goes back thousands of years, and especially in the Chinese culture, storytelling is very, very important because most of the people living in China, you know, before the modern times were peasants, and they would not have been able to read or write Chinese. So storytelling, the oral tradition was very, very important. And so I think, I mean, I love going out and talking, like I'm talking to you now, talking about the stories about the Chinese people. And I think it's, I mean, I've been doing a lot of presentations to different groups who had no idea. And when I'm telling the stories of the early immigrants and what they went through, they are amazed. And so I'm hoping that there will be more people telling the stories of the early Chinese. And certainly there are more and more websites that are recording the histories, because there are a lot of old-timers, and each day as we talk, these old-timers are passing on. It's not that there's a lack of information, but it's just that it's spread all over. So that's why I'm hoping that with my book, that it makes the history of the Chinese in Toronto so accessible to people, because many of the newcomers who are coming here have no idea of the early hardships, the discrimination, what the early Chinese went through to really pave the road for what we have in Toronto and what we have in Canada today. I'm so proud to be a Torontonian because it's such a diverse city. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't problems, there are problems, but when I compare Toronto as it is now and how it was and how it used to be there's no comparison at all. We've come a long, long way. And this whole idea that Toronto is made up of thousands and so many diverse communities, and we're all living together is just, we're very, very lucky.